going to take a look at this kind of roadmap that I made up for you to try to review what we need to know in order to be successful at multiplying multi-digit numbers. Because some of us, after looking at your homework, I can see that some of us are kind of starting to get it. Some of us have gotten a little bit confused along the way, but like I said on Monday, I didn't expect you to master it that day. That's why we're here together today to figure out how I can help you become successful at multiplying multi-digit numbers. All right, so if you take a look at your roadmap, we're all in this tiny little car. All 24 of you are all in this tiny little car. And we're going to travel down the road. So we're trying to get from point A, which is where our car currently is, all the way to point B. And we're going to see what we need to pass along the way or what we needed to learn along the way in order to get from point A to point B. So the first thing that is very, very, very important for us to know how to do is what, Heath? We have to know our basic facts. What are basic facts? Shaylin, what are basic facts? Give me an example of a basic fact. 2 times 6 equals 12. So when I say things like, what is 7 times 6, you should say 42 right off the bat. Okay, those basic facts are the first and most important thing for us to be successful in multi-digit equation. Okay, second step along the way, what do we need to understand? What's the next step on our road? Alyssa?
Understanding the properties of multiplication.
Now you're kind of ahead of the game already, so the next step would be the next one. So take a look at the one down from that one.
Understanding the place value of multi-digit numbers.
Understanding the place value of multi-digit numbers. Why in the world is place value important? That's something we learned way back at the beginning of 4th grade. Why is that important here? Madeline?
Well, because when you doing the word now, multiplication with other multi-digit numbers, you need to know where the place value is for the second number, so you can add you can add the place value of that when you're wording.
What a great answer, Madeline. She's exactly correct. She's saying that when we have these multi-digit numbers, you have to understand that she said the 4 is in the tens place, and that represents
40.
instead of 4. And so that's very, very important for us to know the place value before we even begin. All right, next step on our road map is what, Steele?
Understanding the properties of multiplication.
Properties of multiplication. You guys are really good at that. Who can give me a property of multiplication? Hannah.
A property would be
Give me an example. The distributive property, okay, that we've been working on. What is the distributive property? Sydney?
it's when you expand and multiply again.
She's exactly correct. When we expand, multiply, and then add. So somewhere next to that spot on your paper, understanding the properties of multiplication, I want you to write the distributive property. I just have you write distributive. And beside that, I'm going to have you put an example. So if we have 45 times 32, how would we use the distributive property here? Brianna? 45 times 32.
Do the 45 times 30 and then 45 times 2.
She is exactly correct. We expanded that 32. We made it 45 times 30 and 45 times 2. So we made it into 2 equations. Very good. These properties help us multiply and help us kind of understand things about multiplication a little bit better. What's another property that we've learned along the way? Brogan? The commutative property. Excellent. Rogan, do you remember what the commutative property is, or an example of the commutative property?
6 times 6 equals 36.
It's hard when you use the same digit because you can't really show it with the commutative
6
property.
times 2 equals 12.
And then another equation.
Is 2 times 6 equals.
Exactly. There you go. So he says 6 times 2 equals 12, and 2 times 6 equals 12. So the commutative property kind of helps us, because if you know one of those equations, then you know the other. All right, what's another property we've learned along the way? Ashley? Associative property. I bet if I were to say multiplication association, you would say?
Move the parentheses around and around.
Some people are continuing. Yes, we know the song very well. So the associative property, we obviously see the parentheses. Okay, so if we have 4 times 5, and then outside the parentheses we have times 3, that's going to be the same thing if you move the parentheses around as, I guess we can stick the 4 on the outside this time, 4 times 5 times 3. So you're going to get the same product each time. Any other properties? Unless then you know another one?
The ones property?
There's the ones rule, and she's correct about that. That's a big property that helps us. But it's also called what? There's a word. Madison, can you help her out?
Identity.
Identity property. I think of the identity property as the selfish one because it's all about itself. It's all about me, me, me. Because if you multiply a number by itself, it equals
6.
Or if you multiply a number by 1, it equals
Got it now.
itself. Okay, it's all about itself. So any number multiplied by 1 equals itself. So those are some of the properties that we've learned along the way that help us, again, to get from point A to point B of solving multi-digit multiplication. All right, what is the next stop on our roadmap? Brogan.
Use rounding to estimate products.
Use rounding to estimate products. What does that mean? What does it mean to use rounding to estimate products? Regan?
It means if you give 100 for an answer, you could round it to like the nearest 10, the nearest thousands, the nearest hundreds.
Okay, so if my equation was, let's say, 31 times 29. How would we use rounding to estimate the product of this answer? Paige?
These rounds are 10. So you put 31, it would round to 30. And then
29.
29, it would round to 30.
Okay.
And you multiply that, and then it equals 9.
Well, we can ignore the zeros and do 3 times 3 equals, and then plug in our zeros, 2 zeros.
And then you multiply 31 times 29.
Okay, she says if I multiply 31 times 29 and it's not reasonable meaning that it's not close to this 900, that's going to tell us that we did something wrong, right? So estimating products helps us check for the reasonableness of our answers. All right, and next step on our road path would be, Ashley, what's next? I forgot the zero property. And what is the zero property? 8 times 0 equals 0. And she's correct, I did forget about that one. So the zero property or rule tells us that 8 times 0 equals 0. Any number times 0 equals 0. Okay, next step on our roadmap. Madison, excuse me.
Multiply a multi-digit number by a one-digit number.
Multiply a multi-digit number by a one-digit number. You can give me an example of what that would look like. Sydney, what would that look like?
Like 32 times 5.
32 is a multi-digit number. 5 is a one-digit number. So we need to know how to multiply those. How would we multiply that, Heath?
5 times 2 times 5 is 10. Carry 1
Okay.
is 3. 3 times 5 is 15 plus 1 is 16.
Exactly. Okay. By now we should know how to multiply a multi-digit number by a one-digit number. Very good. All right, and our next step on our roadmap, Emily?
Multiply a multi-digit number by a multiple of 10.
Multiply a multi-digit number by a multiple of 10. Who can give me an example of what that would look like? An equation that includes a multi-digit number and a multiple of 10. Kaden, can you help me out? A multi-digit number and a multiple of 10.
34 times 25.
Is 25 a multiple of 10? There you go. There you go. He found his mistake there. 34 is a multi-digit number. 20 is a multiple of 10, which means if you skip count by tens, all the numbers you land on are multiples of 10. So here, Kaden, can you help me solve this? What do I need to do?
4 times 0 equals 0.
Okay.
3 times
We've multiplied 34 times 0, so now we're going to do,
2
okay?
equals 8.
Yes.
Then 3 times 2 equals 6.
Exactly. Okay, so our answer is 680. All right, so we should know how to multiply a multi-digit number by a multiple of 10. And our last and final step on our roadmap, Dakota, is what?
Determine a method to successfully multiply multi-digit numbers.
Determine a method to successfully multiply multi-digit numbers. That sounds like a whole lot of fancy words to me. But I can guarantee you that you understand what all those terms mean because we have carefully gone over it. There's a fork in the road. When you see a fork in the road, that means that you can either turn right or you can turn left. This fork in the road lets us choose which method works for us. And what is one of the methods you can choose from? Paige?
Emma?
Instead of Emma,
Oh, distributed property or traditional method?
and what do you mean when you say Emma? What does Emma stand for?
One stands for the E stands for expand, M is for multiply, and the other M is for multiply. The A is for add.
Okay, expand, multiply, add. Good. Now we learned that. And what is the other property that we can use to multiply? Shaylin? We've got the distributive property going down this road, going down the other road. You could also use the traditional method, okay, which is what we've been practicing, what we've watched the videos on, and what your parents are most likely to probably be using themselves. So it's up to you, okay? My job is to give you some options, okay? So I'm going to give you an equation, and I'm going to allow you to choose which path you want to take, the traditional method or the distributive property. I want you to solve it next to that path. So I'm going to write it right here. And however you want to solve it is up to you. But if you're using the distributive property, please solve it up here. If you're using the traditional method, please solve it down here. And as you're working on it, I'm going to be walking around, peeking over your shoulder, checking out to see what you're doing. Don't try to hide your work. I just want to see how I can help you. Okay? So I'm going to give you the equation